Good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here. We are here this morning for our Saturday Teachers Workshop. Yay, teachers. So welcome, everyone. I see everyone hopping on Facebook Live, so welcome. Let's go ahead and get our housekeeping items out of the way. Today's webinar is live, so you have the opportunity to participate on Facebook Live. So we'll be asking some questions throughout the webinar, and you have the chance to answer there on Facebook Live, or give me a heart or a thumbs up or a smiley face or a frowny face, whatever works best for you. You get to do that right there. Good morning, everybody. Hello. So the way this works, if this is your first time doing a Facebook Live with us, is that we will do our presentation today. You get the opportunity to interact with me. That makes it instructor-led with childcare licensing. At the end of the workshop today, I will post a link for you to complete your online worksheet if you are needing a certificate of completion for today's training. There's a $15 fee for the certificate of completion, and you'll do that at the end of the workshop today. This is being recorded, so if you miss any of today's material, or you know a coworker or a teacher friend that would benefit from today's material, you can always go to Facebook, go to the library, and see all of our past recordings, not just this one, but everything we've done. Also, all of our videos are posted on my website, timthetrainer.com, under online training. So again, everything is archived. You can always go back and re-watch it if you miss any of today's material, or you know someone that would benefit from it. All right. And because these are virtual, and we're doing it, through Facebook Live, we cover a lot of information in a very short amount of time. It's not like when we're in person and we get to stand up and sing and dance and play and give our brain a little bit of a break in between material, because it doesn't really work that way with Facebook Live. And so you kind of get all the information at one time. So the ability to be able to go back and rewatch and rewind is a really nice thing. So, especially when you get ready to complete your online worksheet, it's great to be able to have that opportunity right there for you. Great. Wow, look at all these people joining us today. This is fantastic. If you don't mind, can you type into your little chat screen right there what city and state you're in? Because we're starting to have people not just in Texas, but all over the country that's joining our Facebook Lives. That's really awesome right there. But tell me what city you're in. If you're in a different state than Texas, let me know what state you're in, so I can see who is represented for us. So type that in for me. I'm up in the North Texas area, so in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is where my schools are located. So I see I have another Fort Worth friend right there. We got some Gainesville people there. Odessa. Welcome, Odessa and San Angelo. So we love you guys out in West Texas. There's Miss Leslie in Brownwood visiting her grandbaby. I'm sure she's in heaven right now, having the time of her life. So great. We got some Charlotte, Texas, some Denton, some more Fort Worth. So all right, welcome everybody. All right, so you're awake and you're able to type. So that's what I was looking for right there. Fantastic. Oh, Lubbock. I just heard some information about Lubbock earlier this week that was interesting. So good to see you here as well. All right. So I am so incredibly excited about today's topic. It's one of my all-time favorite topics, and it's been a while since I've done this presentation, and I kind of updated it a little bit and kind of brought it to life and added some new information. So I'm super excited to be sharing it with you today, but it is the power of play, something that we just don't give enough attention to. I've done this workshop for, almost 15 years now, and it has grown over the years as we get more and more research, with the importance of play out there. And this is actually one of the most popular parent workshops that I do. So a lot of the information today, not only is it going to benefit you in the classroom, but it's also really good for parents to hear. So you can always, recommend any of my YouTube videos or Facebook videos to families in your program as well. We're actually working on a series of parent workshops that we're hoping to launch in the very near future as well. All right. So, seeing children at play means different things to different people. Most everyone thinks that play is just fun, including children themselves. When asked in one study what their favorite activity was, 98% of children answered play. All right, how generic is that? It's pretty awesome. Because it is so enjoyable, many people, many family members, and many lawmakers and experts believe that it's frivolous right there. Play, in their view, is a distraction from learning. All right. So our goal today is to eliminate that stigma right there. That play is a distraction from learning. That is so opposite of being true. As more and more research shows the benefit of play, it is once again taking a front seat in early childhood education. All right. Now, this was really big back in the 70s and early 80s. There was a big movement on play, and people really saw the importance of play in young children. And then it kind of got covered up with the standardized testing and the academic development and pushing for higher education. But once again, play is taking a front seat when it comes to early childhood education. The link between play, especially make-believe play, and academic success has been firmly established. All right. I want to talk here at the beginning. I'm going to throw something really big at you right here at the beginning of the workshop. We've seen over the last 30 to 40 years a decline in executive function skills. And your executive function skills are right here in your prefrontal lobes. These your prefrontal lobes and your executive function skills is where you can problem solve, you can learn, you can cooperate. All right. The goal is to keep us in our prefrontal lobes, the higher centers of the brain. Most importantly, that this is where we self-regulate. All right. This is where we calm. This is where we self-regulate. This is how we learn what to do when the world doesn't go our way. All right. This is how we manage our triggers, is with our executive skills. Well, what we have seen over the last 30 to 40 years is a decline in executive functions. And what research is telling us is that one of the reasons why we have seen a decline in executive function skills is a lack of make-believe play. All right, a lack of make-believe play. And by the way, you're going to see this on your worksheet later on, so you might want to take notes or remember what I'm saying right now. So why is a lack in make-believe play creating a decline in executive function skills? Well, I want many of you to think back to your childhood when we were growing up. And I know a lot of you are probably my age or a little older, a little younger, but around the same time period right there. Well, y'all know that when we woke up in the morning, especially in the summer and on the weekends, we would wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, hop on our bicycles, and just head out into the neighborhood. And we created our own play. We created our own scenarios. We created our own identities, all right? And this built executive function skills, all right? This created the ability for us to self-regulate, the ability for us to manage our triggers, because we went out on our own and created our own scenarios. All right. There's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of curiosity when you're out there creating your own scenarios. Okay. Where nowadays, you fast forward throughout the last 30 to 40 years, we've had, more screen time. So more TV. All right. More movies. All right. The addiction to movies, the video games. All right. the action figures, the dolls, all of the toys that you see, out there in the retail establishments. So basically now when you look at young children, all right, they no longer create their own play. They basically are reenacting something that they've seen in the media. So instead of coming up with their own characters, they're pretending to be Elsa, or they're pretending to be Captain America or Spider-Man. And instead of creating their own scenarios, they're reenacting something they've seen in a movie or something they've seen in TV. All right? So that creativity and that curiosity has been lost right there. Okay? And because of this is why we see a decline in executive functions. All right? And that ability to self-regulate has been lost. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, it's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it, but it makes total sense. All right? So when you're working with your young children in your classroom, at home, wherever it may be, encourage them to, come up with their own characters. Encourage them to come up with their own scenarios, their own play. Go outside and create a new game, all right, that's never been played before. Go outside and build a structure that's brand new and never been built before, all right? But we want the children to start creating their own type of play, and that's going to help with the executive function skills, all right? I just did a parent workshop a couple of weeks ago for a program in Dallas, and we talked about this, because this particular group of parents were all about, academic success. We want our children to be academically successful. We want them to get into Harvard. That actually came up, all right? They wanted them to get into Harvard. And I'm like, well, let's work on potty training first, okay? Well, this is important, though, because one thing that we have definitely learned, especially over the last 5 years, is that the reason why children are failing standardized tests is not because they don't know the material. The reason why children fail standardized tests is because of the stress and the anxiety and the frustration that's put on them. And they can't handle the social and emotional part of it. They can't handle the self-regulation. Therefore, they fail the test, all right? It has nothing to do with the material. So the academic skills will come in due time, all right? The kids are going to get that. We've got to teach them the social and emotional blueprints for learning, and they're going to learn it through play. All right. So, what do children learn through play? Play that makes it so important. Play is children's entry to the physical, social, and affective world. All right. Write this down if you're taking notes. Okay. This is so important right here. Play builds all of the cognitive skills that we're going to discuss in this training. All right. So if y'all go back, we're going to talk about a lot of cognitive skills today. But if you want to really get deep into understanding cognitive development, I did a webinar about 2 months ago on understanding cognitive development. You can find that on my website, timthetrainer.com, or on Facebook. Go back and watch that video, and we go really deep into it. But we're going to talk about a lot of it today, too. As we talk about the importance of play, all right? So, play builds the developmental skills needed for cognitive development, all right? And again, you might see that again on your worksheet later on. Sometimes when we're working with families, a very common comment that we hear from families is, well, all my child does here is play. What good is play? All right. One of my objectives for today's training is to give you the language to use when parents ask you, why does my child play so much? When are they going to start learning? All right. I want you to be able to say, whoa, Mom, let me tell you all of the incredible things that your child is learning while they play. All right. And I want you to be able to blow their mind with everything that they're learning while they play. All right. So I'm going to kind of go through the different learning centers that we have in our classrooms. We're going to go through the different types of play that we commonly do in the classroom, and we'll talk about, what the children are learning while they're playing in these learning centers. And I challenge you, as you're listening to this material and you're watching this video, kind of take notes. And, when I'm talking about the block center, kind of write down block center and listen and reflect on the material we're covering and be brainstorming on ways that you can enhance your learning centers whenever you get back to your classroom, on Monday morning. So this is not just about listening, and learning, but we're going to be doing some planning during today's webinar as well. And I don't care if you've been working in early education, for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, or 20 years, all right? We always have something to learn. We can always be humble and hungry for new knowledge. But what I really want you to understand, every single season, I want you to understand this, that even though you've been teaching for 20 years, it is the first year that child is in your classroom, all right? And every single child needs to be taught differently. Every single child is going to play differently. And so when you put a group of 18 brand new children in your classroom's going to look and feel and operate differently, no matter how many years you've been doing this, all right? So we all have something to learn here, absolutely. Let's start off by talking about one of my favorite learning centers in the classroom, and that is the block center, all right? So when children play with blocks and cars and trucks, all right, here's what they're learning. First off, concept of shape, size, length, and location, all relative to learning to read and to do math, all right? So when they are playing in the block center, when they're building structures, all right, they're actually developing reading and math skills, all right? So again, the language that you want to write down here so that when you're using this to talk about your classroom is the concept of shape, size, length, and location. And all of this, again, is relevant to reading and math skills, all right? They're learning to create and repeat patterns, all right? Once again, a math skill. But not only is creating and repeating patterns a math skill, this is a huge a piece of brain development. Our brain is a pattern-seeking organ, all right? And our brain works best, all right, when it's creating patterns, when it's creating routines, when there's structure, and when there's predictability. So, throughout your classroom, whenever you're planning, okay, structure, routine, predictability, these are all very important. Playing in that block center to create and repeat patterns is like, vitamins for the brain, all right? It's really, really good stuff right there. To exercise imagination. So again, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, challenge your children to come up with their own scenarios, their own characters, their own storylines, rather than repeating something they've seen in media. Children learn to express their ideas, okay, and sometimes be able to express their ideas in a non-verbal way, all right? I always say, I have a whole webinar on my website that's about observations and assessments. And one of the most important things that you can do in your classroom is, the observation and assessment piece. Sometimes you just got to sit back and listen and watch your young children, all right? And you'll get a lot of information, especially when they're expressing their ideas. I see a question on Facebook about how can you utilize this in an infant room? Be patient, okay? I'm going to talk about all of the different age groups, as we go through this material. Some topics are going to be a little bit heavier on the younger side. Some topics are going to be a little bit heavier on the infant toddler side, all right? But this is relevant to any age group that you're working with, all right? Now, You can have a block center in the infant room. All right, it doesn't have to be wooden blocks. All right, there's nothing that says it has to be good old-fashioned wooden blocks. I'm an advocate for the good old-fashioned wooden blocks in your 3 and 4-year-old classrooms, but in your infant room, you're going to have soft blocks. All right, the softer blocks that are easier for them to handle it, and even if they put it in their mouth, it's not going to damage the equipment or endanger the child. All right, so soft blocks in your infant toddler room, and then when you get into your toddler 2-year-old, maybe the plastic blocks right there, sturdy plastic blocks. I'm not the biggest fan of the cardboard blocks for a couple of different reasons. They get stepped on, they get crushed. When kids do put them in their mouth, they get soggy, which creates a health and safety issue. I'm just not the biggest fan of those cardboard blocks that you put together. All right. I actually utilize those more in after-school programs. And I utilize those more in adult learning. I actually do several different exercises with adults using those cardboard blocks, but not so much for the kids. So again, same thing in your infant toddler room, concept of shape, size, length, and location, where the infant toddler teacher is going to be verbally explaining this to the child using language. We're planting the seed. We're planting the seed in that infant toddler room. All right, creating those patterns, all right, for the infants using the different colored soft blocks right there, all right. Now, it's kind of like, in an infant room, especially if you've got smaller, non-mobile infants, you're kind of playing for the child, all right? You're playing for the child, but then you're verbally explaining what's going on, and your facial expressions and your body language is transferring that enjoyment, all right? Because, any of y'all that work in an infant toddler room, y'all know that the more animated you are, the more joyful the environment is for the child. They love your spontaneousness and your animation, all right? And then we transfer that belief to the children the older they get. All right. The other thing that children learn when playing in the block center is to cooperate with others. All right. Y'all know that we talked about executive functions, at the beginning of the workshop. One of the best ways to keep someone in their executive state is empathy and acts of service. All right. Being able to understand other people's feelings and being able to do something for other people. All right. This is a great way to keep someone in their executive state. Well, when you're working in the block center, there's a lot of cause and effect, all right? Where if you remove one block, it's going to affect the whole structure, all right? Or there's a limited number of, a rectangle block, or there's a limited number of red blocks, all right? So that cooperation, that understanding each other is really, really big right here as well. Problem solving as well. All right, problem solving as well. So what's going to happen if I remove this block? The structure may fall. So, what am I going to do to make it more sturdy? What am I going to do to where I can move this block without, ruining my structure? There's a lot of problem solving that's going on right there. Now, going back to infants and toddlers, so I can make sure that I include y'all, peekaboo. All right, so if you just take your block and, put it there in front of the infant, put a cloth over it, like a clean, unused burp cloth, all right? Put that cloth over it. Where did the blue block go? There it is! There it is! With lots of facial expressions and lots of excitement. When we talk about cognitive development, once again, one of the best games you can play in your infant classrooms is peekaboo. All right. And again, your facial expressions, your body language is important right there. But peekaboo is problem solving. All right. You got that right there. Something else I love about Block Center is the property of woods. property of wood. So we're actually incorporating science now into our block center. So you can talk to the children as they are playing. You can pick up that, that piece of wood and go, oh, look at this wood. Do you see how it feels? Look at the lines in the wood right there. There's an eye in the wood, and you can kind of talk about the different properties of wood right there. I even like to take a block out of the block center, take it over into the art center and put, paper on top of it, and then kind of do your, scribbling with the crayon and, being able to transfer the properties of the wood over onto the paper. So that's pretty cool right there too. One of the biggest forms of development that we see in the block center is the sense of self-worth. All right, increasing children's self-esteem, and you can do that in the block center, with the kids, because for young children, there's always adults that are looking down on them. All right, that not looking down in a negative way, but the child is this big and the adult is this big, so the kid's always having to look up at the adult. All right, always having to look up at the adult. So, the block center, especially when you've got little action figures and people, in the block center, it's the child's opportunity to see themselves as a giant, okay, where they're no longer having to look up to someone. They're able to see people down here. So it's really good for their self-worth. It's really good for their self-esteem. Great right there. Awesome, moving on. Now, I see some people just, y'all might be doing this for your own purpose and not mine, but I see some people typing in their names into the chat screen. That's not necessary on my end. You don't have to do that. As far as attendance and people that are here, you're going to complete an online worksheet at the end of today's training. So that's how we will count attendance. So I know in other platforms, you're asked to type in names. You don't have to do that with me. You're going to do an online worksheet, and that's how we're going to track who's here today. All right. I see a lot of people that have just joined us. So those of you that just joined us, very, very important that at the end of today's workshop, you go back and watch the beginning. All right. So if you're jumping in here in the middle, you got some catching up to do. So you need to make sure you watch the beginning. All right, let's talk about stringing beads. All right, stringing beads and what we're learning when we're stringing beads. Eye-hand coordination, which is very, very important when it comes to executive functions and cognitive development. So eye-hand coordination with stringing beads. Once again, the concept of color, shape, and location. Number and proportion concepts, such as more, less, longer, and shorter. All right. So, those are very important math skills. They're very important reading skills. All right. So, there you go. To create and reproduce patterns and sequences. All right. Once again, a math skill, but also huge for brain development. And again, you might want to write this down because you're going to see it again on your online worksheet that you complete at the end of the class today. All right. But when you're stringing beads, you're creating and reproducing patterns and sequences. And like I mentioned earlier, our brain is a pattern-seeking organ. So the more structure, the more routine, the more patterns and sequences we can create in our lives, the better it is for the brain, all right? And our brain craves that, all right? And I'm not just talking about young children. This is important for adults too, all right? I'm reading a book right now on keeping your brain sharp as a aging adult, as you get older, what are some ways that you can keep your brain sharp and productive and healthy, and even for, 50, 60-year-old people, it talks a lot about, creating and reproducing patterns and sequences in your life. All right. So it's not just for young children here. It's important for adults as well. So pretty cool stuff. And then the thing I really like about, stringing beads or activities similar to stringing beads is pride and accomplishment. All right, that joy juice that you get whenever you accomplish something, when you do something well, that joy juice just squirts out of your brain, and it's natural joy juice, which is what we want right there. All right, that dopamine that's going, yes, I did it. I feel so good about myself. All right, and we want that natural chemical from the brain being released whenever we celebrate, rather than an alternate chemical that's giving us that same sensation. Now, with young children, we don't put a lot of alternate chemicals into their body to make us feel good, but as an adult, we do. All right, whether it's alcohol or prescription drugs or sometimes illegal drugs that we take to give us that chemical that is released from the brain to make us feel good, when we accomplish something or when we do something well. All right, we want the natural chemical. Now, in the classroom, what I challenge you to do is to, all throughout the day, all right, throughout the entire day, we're going to be looking for opportunities to create that pride and accomplishment, that self-worth, that celebration, so that we can get those natural chemicals flowing in the brain, all right? And then here's what I love about this. What you offer to others, you strengthen within yourselves. So when your children are successful, you get that sense of success as well, all right? You're proud of your accomplishments with helping these kids, so that makes your natural juices flow. So pretty cool stuff right there, all right? Playing with puzzles. Y'all remember puzzles, right? This is one thing in the classroom that I'm not seeing, puzzles being used very often anymore, and they're so fabulous, all right? So let's get the puzzles back into the classroom. But let me tell you why this is so important right here. When children play with puzzles, they are learning about the relationships of parts to the whole, all right? Which again is a basic math concept, so that's important right there. They're learning again the eye-hand coordination using their pincer movements, which are these right here. The concept of shape, size, color, and location. Vocabulary, all right, related to the subject on the puzzle. So we actually see a lot of vocabulary development whenever children are putting together puzzles. Whether it's an infant room, toddler room, preschool, pre-K, the size of the puzzle needs to be age appropriate. They need to be safe and not a choking hazard. But we create the vocabulary through the curiosity and the problem solving, all right? So the problem solving on clues of the puzzle, that's what they're learning right here. Here's something that's very important, and again, you might want to write this down because you might see it later on on your online worksheet. It's about negative and positive space. Seeing something up against a background, all right? So you've got a solid background like the table, all right? And then you've got the small puzzle pieces on top of it. So that's negative and positive space, all right? This is critical for reading, all right? So, when you're talking to your parents about, what is my child learning while they're playing, putting together puzzles is very critical for reading development, all right? Because of that negative and positive space. So, actually, that's, again, why we got to get these puzzles back in the classroom right here. Self-confidence. All right, the self-confidence that we're building as they solve more and more, puzzles, or the more difficult parts of the puzzle. And then as they put the puzzle together more and more, that confidence just builds and builds and builds. Even as adults, I took a trip a couple of years ago with a whole bunch of friends, and the Airbnb that we stayed in had like this big coffee table in the living room with a puzzle that had been started by the people that owned the place, but they were allowing the guests to work on it and everything. Well, while we were on this vacation, we had one day that was real rainy and stormy, and you couldn't go out and play and have fun like we had planned. And here's all of these grown adults sitting around this coffee table working on this puzzle. And it was so funny that, the more we worked on it, the self-confidence was building and the excitement was building. And it was just a really cool experience. And I thought a lot about this training whenever I was doing that. All right. Independence. All right. Independence as you use puzzles without help. Research actually shows that children prefer to work on puzzles by themselves. All right, so that's really interesting right there. And then the last skill that children are learning whenever they're working with puzzles is sorting. All right, as they use sets of puzzle pieces belonging to different puzzles or like puzzle pieces. So, I always like, anytime I get a new puzzle for a classroom, before I will put it out for the children, I usually number the back of the pieces or get a marker and put a colored dot on the back of the pieces so that if pieces get mixed together, we can sort them out and get them back to their puzzle family. But you just created a sorting activity. So not just the face of the puzzle, but the upside down piece of the puzzle. Now you've got a sorting activity. So pretty cool stuff. Even when you do start to have puzzle pieces missing and you're no longer able to put together a puzzle because you have too many missing pieces, don't go throwing them away. All right. I love taking puzzle pieces and putting them in your art center, putting them in with collage material so that children can make artwork, all right, out of some of the puzzle pieces. Those of you that have the bigger puzzle pieces that you would typically use in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, again, if you get to a situation where you're missing pieces, I like to transfer those bigger pieces into a 3-year-old, 4-year-old classroom because now they're really good for tracing. All right, tracing skills that you can use those puzzle pieces for. Even again, going back to the adults, I've got a picture somewhere of this. It's a Polaroid picture too. If that's want to tell you how long ago this was. That I actually had spent like a whole year gathering old puzzles, with missing pieces, and I made a bulletin board with nothing but a collage of puzzle pieces, and I actually did my border with the puzzle pieces. It was super cool. All right, one of those bulletin boards that you don't want to take down. All right. Once again, just housekeeping items right here. I see a lot of people that are just joining, which leads me to believe there might be some technical issues with Facebook. I'm not seeing anything on my end, but because I'm seeing so many people coming and going, it leads me to believe that there might be some technical issues going on. Once again, if you missed anything, this is being recorded. I will post it on my website. It will be posted on Facebook if you need to go back and rewatch it if you missed anything. My advice to you, if you are having technical issues, is to make sure that all other applications are closed. So if you're using a tablet or a phone to watch this, make sure that all other applications are closed on your phone or tablet. If you're using a computer or a laptop, close all other windows, close all other applications, and just have the Facebook Live video feed running. The more things you have running in the background on your device, the more likely you are to have technical issues. All right. For this past year, since we've been living in virtual insanity, we've definitely learned this to be helpful right there. All right, let's move on. Here's another item in the classroom that we learned so much from, and we're just not doing it enough these days. Prior to the pandemic, all right? So let's pretend for a moment that we are in a non-pandemic world, okay? I need y'all to pretend for a moment that we're in a non-pandemic world. Cooking projects, all right? Cooking projects are fantastic. Now, with the pandemic, need to put a pause on this one for now, all right? But as soon as we get past the pandemic, let's get cooking projects going again, all right? But right now, we don't want, the cross-contamination and the health issues that could come with this. But with cooking projects, we're learning about nutrition, we're learning about taste, we're learning about the food groups, all right? Because we're talking about these things as we're doing the cooking project. How to heat and to cool things, all right? And how heat and cold changes things. This is fantastic right here. That, you bring in an ice cube. And you have the children hold an ice cube, and you talk about it's real solid, all right? It's even a little heavy, and you talk about the ice cube, and then you put it in the bowl, and then throughout the course of the day, the ice cube melts into water, all right? And then the kids can watch it, and then you have a conversation about what happened to the ice cube, and it's no longer solid, it's now liquid, it's no longer heavy like it was before. So some great conversations that you can have about, something as simple as ice. I actually like to put ice in my sensory bin. So if you're doing a water table, or sometimes you put rice or beans or macaroni in your sensory table, I like to dump a bag of ice in there and let the kids play in the ice. And again, throughout the day, it changes forms. One of my favorite cooking projects to do when we talk about the learning of how heat and cold changes things, bread. All right, make some bread in your classroom where you have the dough, you have all the ingredients to make the dough, and then you're going to have the kids feel the dough and put their fingers in it and talk about the texture of it. All right, you can even taste a little bit if that's safe for the age group. And then you make the dough and you have this whole conversation, and then you bake it, and like a totally different item comes out. Now you've got this big, fluffy piece of bread that looks and feels and tastes completely different. It's a fantastic cooking project for young children. Now let me go ahead and just say this, because I know a lot of you are probably thinking about this right now. Anytime I do a cooking project in the classroom, it's kind of like one of those cooking shows that you see on TV, where they do all the ingredients and they mix it all together, and then they put it in the oven, and then you go on commercial break and you come back and it's done. All right, well, that thing didn't cook during commercial break. All right. So whatever it is that we mix together in the classroom, as soon as we're done with that, I usually throw it in the trash. All right, not in front of the kids, because the kids have been touching it. They've probably drooled on it, because when kids play, they leak. Right? There's probably a lot of germs and things like that get into the ingredients. So we're going to make it, we're going to talk about it, we're going to touch it and feel it, and then we're going to throw it away. And then before I've even started the cooking project, I've created a safe, sanitary, healthy end result that I'm going to bring out to the kids, and look what we made. All right? And then it's nice and clean and safe and healthy. All right? That's kind of how I like to do it right there. One of those most important skills that children learn whenever they're doing cooking projects is the concept of volume and measurement. Okay, so measurement skills is something really important that we should be doing in our early childhood classroom, where we're constantly talking about weight and size and length and the quarter of a cup, half a cup, teaspoon, tablespoon. These are all measurement skills that we can have this vocabulary and this learning opportunity with the kids. All right. Vocabulary, because again, when you're doing cooking projects, you do use a lot of words that you don't use in everyday life. All right. So the more we can expand that vocabulary, the better. The relationship between the part and the whole. So again, there's that basic math concept. And awareness of not only that child culture, but other children's cultures, all right? So, when I'm doing cooking projects, I love to bring in recipes from other cultures, especially if you have a child in that classroom that belongs to that culture, inviting them to bring in a recipe, and maybe even inviting the parent to come in and do the cooking project with you. All right, that's going to be beneficial to the whole family. All right. Playing in water. I've kind of mentioned water table a minute ago, but one thing I love to talk about when we're doing water table, or if you don't have a water table in your classroom, just get a tub. All right, you can go to the Dollar General and get a dish tub and just have it right there on the table. And again, infants, toddlers, preschoolers, every age group can benefit from water play. We're going to talk about how some things sink and some things float. All right, so bring different toys into the water table that you have around the classroom. Popular toys that children like to play with, that it's safe for them to get wet. All right, you're obviously not going to bring something that the water would damage it. But talk about how some things sink and some things float. This is very fascinating to the children. Observe how water takes on different forms in different containers, all right, and how water changes. You'll talk about that. Talk about different temperatures, so we can have some cold water and then some warm water. We don't want it to be scorching hot. We don't want to hurt anybody, but you talk about, the different temperatures of water. Have good conversations about the difference between wet, dry, and evaporate. All right, so some really, really critical stuff right here. Infant toddler teachers, you need to be doing this, talking about the difference between wet and dry and experimenting with the difference between wet and dry, because this is going to be important when it comes to potty training. All right, I actually do a whole workshop on potty training, and this is one thing that we talk about. We got to make sure that children understand the language that we're using whenever we're potty training. So, hey, Beverly, are you wet? Well, if Beverly doesn't know what wet means, she might go, no, and, there's urine dripping out of her diaper, all right? So we got to make sure that they understand the language before we start practicing the skill. All right, so the difference between wet and dry, the difference between clean and dirty, they've got to understand that and practice that before they start the potty training. All right, hopefully that makes sense to everyone right there. I live, most of us here are in Texas, especially here in North Texas. We have our wonderful hot summers here in Texas, which I love. I'm one of those people. I'm a water person, so I could live in the water all the time if it were up to me. But one activity that I love to do in the summertime with the kids is evaporation. So, get a good old-fashioned pickle jar, all right, a glass pickle jar, fill it full of water, put it somewhere on your playground where it can be fenced off and safe, so it's not a safety hazard. They're not going to break it and get cut. So, usually we have the air conditioner units that are fenced in so that the kids can't get to the air conditioning units. I'll usually set the pickle jar right on the other side of the inside of the fence so they can still see it, but it's protected and it's safe. And then you leave that water, filled up, and then over the course of several days, when we've got 100-degree weather, the water is evaporating. And then you have wonderful conversations with the kids about where's it going? What's happening to the water? And you even have an opportunity for charting right here, all right, which is a really important skill that we need to be practicing. So we're going to chart, all right, how much water is in the jar from one day to the next. And I love doing this because the kids, especially if you're doing this with younger children, they have some very creative answers about what's happening to the water. There's a dragon, a unicorn dragon that flies out of the sky and it's drinking the water and then it flies away and we never see it. They just have some great answers right there. So it's fun. It's fun right there. What happens when you add soap? So you get your water table, and you've got clean water in there, and then you get your dish soap and you squirt it in there, and it makes the blue squiggly lines, which are really fun. But then when you stick your fingers in and you start mixing it up, it creates bubbles. And I'm sorry, bubbles makes everyone happy. I don't care what mood you're in, bubbles make everyone happy, right? Those of you that live in the big city, I encourage you to get some bubbles from the dollar store, from Walmart, and just keep them in your car, all right? And anytime you get stuck in traffic, whether it's at a red light or you're stuck in traffic, on the interstate, just roll down your window and start blowing bubbles out the window, all right? Not only is it going to relieve your stress and make you giggle, imagine all the cars around you. They're going to smile and they're going to giggle too. So bring joy and happiness to the world, all right? Even when you're sitting in traffic. So I love doing that. That's always fun right there. So that's a great learning opportunity though, because what happens to the water whenever you add the soap? It's cool stuff right there. All right. Yes, Teresa, do it. Do it. Go blow bubbles out your car window, or if you have a convertible or a sunroof, blow those bubbles. Imagine what the cars around you are going to think. It's great. Eye-hand coordination as you learn to pour. So if you've got the measuring cup and they're having to pour, or they've got a pitcher and they're learning to pour, this is great eye-hand coordination and building muscle strength. All right. So good stuff right there. And the concept of empty and full, volume and weight. So again, one thing I like to do is to get the pickle jar, that's nice and clear. Talk to the kids about, here's a pickle jar. It's empty right now. There's nothing in it, all right? And then we're going to fill the pickle jar with some big rocks, all right? So go to Joann's or Hobby Lobby, or maybe just out on the road and get some big rocks. Fill that pickle jar up with rocks, Is the jar full now? And the kids are going to go, the jar is full, Well, hang on just a second. Now let's get some sand and pour sand on top of the rocks, and then the sand's going to fill up from the bottom up, and the kids are going to be like, whoa, now is it full or empty? They're going to be like, it's full. Well, hang on just a second, and then I'm going to get a pitcher of water and pour the pitcher of water over the sand and the rocks and see it fill up. So, so even when it appears to be full, you can add more to it, all right? And this is great because we talk a lot in our trainings about being able to see the world from other people's point of view, being able to understand other people's version of reality, all right, and what reality means. So doing this activity about empty and full, volume and weight, and with the rocks and the sand and the water, is a great way to get the children to see different versions of reality, all right? So, and that's going to be beneficial in so many different areas. All right, let's talk about painting with the Art Easel, all right? The Art Easel in the classroom, the Art Easel outside on the playground, a table easel, so many different ways that you can incorporate this into your classroom. For your infant toddler teachers, putting them in a high chair and putting paper on the high chair and allowing them to finger paint or scribble in a safe and sanitary way. You can do that. Usually with my infants, when we're talking about painting, I'll use pudding, or I'll use applesauce or yogurt, different items like that. And I like the applesauce because it's gritty. So you've got good sensory development right there. Even yogurt that has the chunks of fruit, because, then again, it's a good sensory item. And if they eat it, no big deal. All right. So with painting, to develop their imagination and creativity so they get to express themselves in an artistic way. Again, eye-hand coordination, which is going to be helpful when they're learning to write. So, infant, toddler, 2-year-old, 3-year-old teachers, we need to be doing a lot of activities with eye-hand coordination because that's going to be critical for those pre-K and kindergarten classrooms when they're starting the writing skills. Learning the names of colors and what happens when you mix colors and you create a new color. So that's fascinating to the children right there. To distinguish shapes and purposely create new shapes. So this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of today's workshop about encouraging children to create their own play, to create their own scenarios, all right, their own scripts. And so, painting at the art easel is actually a great way to incorporate this because they can create their own shapes, all right, their own designs. Once again, when we're painting, to notice patterns from a background, which is necessary for reading. All right, so again, we're those pre-reading skills right there. To express their feelings and ideas, and psychologists use this a lot, where you have the children do simple artwork because it's a great way for them to express themselves, and especially children that have unresolved trauma. We do this a lot with children experiencing unresolved trauma because it's a way for them to safely express their feelings, express their fears, express their anxiety and their frustrations, in a safe way that they don't feel like they're going to be harmed from it. So this is a good way for you to learn what's going on in that child's life. If you have a child with aggressive behavior, the kicking and the scratching and the biting and the hitting are nothing but physical actions. You've got to dig deeper into that. So what is the factor that's causing the behavior, the factor that's causing the aggression? Well, the more you can get the children to express their feelings and their ideas, the more likely you are to put your finger on that factor. All right, so this is great for these kids. All right, and don't be afraid of the mess. Messes can be cleaned up, period. All right, but the end result that you're going to get from this is going to be far more beneficial than the mess that is created. All right, so don't get all caught up in the messiness. All right, we can clean that up, no big deal. All right, that your ideas have value. All right, so that when we are painting, that their ideas have value. That's important. So again, that self-esteem, that self-worth, all right, that we want to build in young children. The relationships of space and size is great. The concept of symmetry, balance, and design. These are all great cognitive skills that are developing while they're painting. I like, especially in like my pre-K programs and my after-school programs, to actually either download off of the internet or go buy a book that has, famous paintings in it, like a Van Gogh or, a Picasso or whatever, but some famous pieces of art, and put it next to the art easel and let the children recreate it. All right, that's really cool stuff right there, for them to do, especially in an older classroom and after-school program. And y'all, this is all about process versus product, that it's about the process and what the children are learning while they're creating it. It's not about the end product, all right? It's not about, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's good or bad. No, it's about what they're learning while they're creating it. And the conversation and the engagement that you're having with them throughout this process. That's the key, all right? So many times I see early educators get so caught up in the end product. It doesn't matter, all right? It's about the process. It's about the process, yes. I see the comment, messes are also learning opportunities. Yeah, I love it. Even as adults, we like to make a mess sometimes, all right? Secretly, all right? Yeah. Finger painting, kind of going off of the art easel and into finger painting. Again, it's to exercise their imagination and creativity. It's about mixing the colors and creating new colors. Once again, the concept of shape, size, and location. Eye-hand coordination that we're getting from finger painting. It's kind of going off of this last comment. Finger painting is an acceptable way of making a mess. It's an acceptable way of making a mess, all right? It's just like, Children climbing on furniture. All right, and I know a lot of you get frustrated when you've got 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds climbing on top of furniture. Well, let's give them something appropriate to climb on. They obviously need to climb. So let's find them something appropriate to climb on. And right here, you have the kids that are messy. Let's give them an appropriate way to make a mess. All right, that's creating boundaries. All right, that's creating boundaries and structure. Here is an appropriate time to make a mess. Okay, over here is not an appropriate time to make a mess. All right, so show them the difference between the two. It's a great way of having fun, sharing ideas with others that are nearby. All right, so there you go. I was going to save this for the very end, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there for y'all. All of the material I'm covering today, when we're done with today's webinar, I'm going to have this posted on my website under Documents, so you can download, everything that we're talking about in some really fun slides, this afternoon. So I'll have that posted whenever we're done with the webinar. I didn't want to post it ahead of time because I didn't want you to get ahead of me. All right, but I'll have all of this available for you. It's cool stuff. All right. When I play with paste and glue and collage materials, we're learning once again to exercise their imagination and creativity. The concept of shape, size, location, and design, once again, a reading skill. Learning that some things are sticky, the texture, all right? So, I have a whole training on working with children with signs and symptoms of a special need. If you have children in your classroom that have some special needs, whether they are diagnosed or undiagnosed, anything sensory related is going to be beneficial to those kids. All right, and remember, most of the children we have in our early education programs have not been diagnosed yet. That's very common. All right, they're not old enough to be diagnosed yet, so we get them before the diagnosis happens. So collage material is great for these kids. All right, the different textures that we have in there. Collage material is a great way to create patterns and designs to distinguish patterns from a background, which once again goes back to reading. All right, so y'all are starting to see a lot of trends here where so many things that we do when we play is creating opportunities for reading and math. All right, so very, very important. Musical instruments, I know your favorite, right? I think that when they sell musical instruments at Discount School Supply and Kaplan and Lakeshore and Walmart and all these retailers that sell musical instruments for young children, they should also come with a bottle of Advil for the adult, right? No, just kidding. But I know that so many times the musical instruments go to the top of the closet because they're giving the teacher a headache, with all the noise that the kids are making. But come on. We got to engage the children with musical instruments. We got to get them to use them appropriately. We're going to practice. We're going to practice using them appropriately. But playing with musical instruments, there are so many incredible cognitive skills that are developing, executive skills that are developing with musical instruments. So here we go. Oh, and I see some comments. Savannah is saying yes. Her 2-year-old classrooms love musical instruments. Yes, high five to you, Savannah. Great job. Great job. We're learning to be conscious of the rhythm in music. All right. So once again, brain is a pattern-seeking organ. The more patterns and sequences we can create, the healthier the brain. Music is a great way to program those patterns and sequences in the brain. All right. Even when you think about nursery rhymes and poetry, there's pattern, there's pattern, there's pattern, there's sequences, there's sequences, there's sequences. This was all designed for an intentional reason. All right. It's brain development. It's brain development. There's a lot of research, and I'm not a fan of this, but this is just my own personal preference. My son would argue, with me, but, rap music Rap music is not my cup of tea, but it's some of your cup of tea, and that's okay. But there's actually a lot of research about how healthy rap music is for your brain. All right. Now we can do without the inappropriate words and the inappropriate slang, comments that we sometimes hear. But we hear that in all music. All right. It's not just rap music. I mean, country and western music. Your dog dies and your grandma got ran over by a train, and all that stuff too. So there's stuff like that in all music. But the rap music is actually, because of the patterns and the sequences and the beat. All right, the rhythm that you have with rap music, it's very, very healthy for the brain. It's kind of cool stuff. All right, the concept of fast, slow, loud, and soft. All right, this all goes to self-regulation. These are all self-regulation skills. All right, where we can talk really loud and then we can talk really soft. All right, and we breathe whenever we do that. So all self-regulation skills. Music is a great way to express yourself in different ways. So we want the children to express themselves. We talk so often in so many of our trainings that all behavior is a form of communication. We want to encourage children to communicate with the skills that they have. All right. So whatever skills they have in their bag, that's what they're going to use to communicate. The more skills we can lend, the more communication we're going to get. All right. So music is a great way for them to express themselves in new ways. All right. Here is what I want y'all to write down. So those of you that are taking notes, here's a note-taking opportunity for you. All right. When children play with musical instruments, they are learning to listen. Listening and auditory discrimination. Auditory discrimination. Those skills are necessary for learning to read. All right, so we're right back to the reading skills, but that listening and auditory discrimination goes to reading skills. So I think one of your worksheet questions is, how is playing with musical instruments, how is it important for learning to read? And so there you go. All right. Oh, I see some comments right there. Kids Bop, rap, and cuckoo kangaroo. All right. Yeah, those are really cool things right there. One of my favorite musical groups for young children for your early education classroom is the Learning Station. All right, the Learning Station. And if you just go to Google, go to the website, and just type in Learning Station, their website comes up. They've got so many incredible resources on there. They have multiple CDs that you can buy. You can download their music on almost every music platform. But what I love about the Learning Station is all of their songs and all of their dances are brain related. They're all about brain development and self-regulation skills. So really, really good stuff right there. All right, and then the last thing with musical instruments is they're learning to interpret signals and cues, all right, which again is very important for the self-regulation. All right, moving on. Scissors, y'all remember scissors, right? And again, toddler, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, there are age-appropriate scissors that we can get for these classrooms. Now, make sure that any scissors that you have in your classrooms are age appropriate for the group that you're working with. That's so incredibly important right there. But again, with scissors, they're not just cutting, all right, but they're learning to control the small muscles in their hand, which is going to go back to writing, all right, the concept of shape, size, color, and location. And to exercise their imagination and creativity. So there's a lot going on right there. See, I'm still stuck on the music part of it right there, because I saw Bren talk about Jack Hartman, which is cool also. Red Grammar is another one that y'all might want to look up. And I've probably been listening and using Red Grammar music for several years. And just a couple of years ago, I realized that Andy Grammer is his son. And many of y'all might be familiar with Andy Grammer. You got to keep your head up. Whoa. That song, or that Honey, I'm Good. I should have another, but I don't think I should. Or Good to Be Alive. He's got all these songs. But that his dad is actually a children's artist, music artist. So it's kind of cool. Look it up. It's neat. Dancing. All right, I love dancing in the classroom with the kids. I'm not a good dancer, all right? I'm a horrible dancer. But when you're in the classroom with the kids, it doesn't matter, all right? It's just like singing. It's not American Preschool Idol. The kids don't care that you can't sing, all right? But, dancing is great. And, of course, here in Texas, we've got some new regulations coming out on physical development. So what a great way to meet those physical development requirements with dancing, all right? So with dancing, they are learning to express themselves physically. So, we talked about expressing ourselves through art. We talked about expressing ourselves with musical instruments. And now we're learning to express ourselves physically through our movement, all right? That's pretty awesome right there. To be conscious of the moods and the rhythm of music. All right, so you're using your body to recognize the rhythms and the moods. All right, balance and coordination. Balance and coordination is so incredibly important, and y'all need to be working on this every single day. You need to incorporate some type of physical movement in your classroom that focuses on balance and coordination. Your toddlers and your 2-year-olds need this a whole lot, because they've got to learn how to control, the movement of their bodies and their momentum. All right. So toddlers and 2-year-olds, they don't know how to control their momentum. So activities with balance and coordination are going to help that right there. See, I woke y'all up when I started talking about music and dancing. Look at everyone making comment now. I love it. I love it. Y'all are awake and energized now. I'm going to just throw something in there. I've done 2 different workshops just within the last 3 weeks, ironically, for 2 different organizations about preventing burnout. All right. I did one on preventing burnout in the classroom, and I just recently did a leadership symposium where we talked about preventing burnout, for leaders. Well, first off, we don't get burned out because of the job that we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. All right. So, I love this training today, the power of play, because I don't know about y'all, but as we talk about these different learning centers and these different types of play, it's energizing, it's kind of motivating, and it kind of gets that blood flowing and that excitement about being in the classroom going again. So that's going to connect you with your passion and really help with some of that burnout that some of you might be experiencing from this extremely difficult year that we've had. But the other thing I talk about when we talk about preventing classroom burnout is that it is so incredibly important that even as an adult, you express yourself creatively, all right? And being able to tap into that creative expression is going to help you eliminate stress and burnout. So, whatever it is that you do that is your creative outlet is very, very beneficial to you. Singing and dancing is probably a lot of your creative outlet, whether you're singing alone in the car or you're in your bedroom or your bathroom and you're dancing. But for us early educators, we get to dance right here in the classroom with the kids. And that's relieving a lot of stress and burnout off of us, the adult. So it's going to be beneficial for everyone. All right, so cool stuff. I talked earlier about, when we were talking about appropriate ways to create a mess. Let's talk about climbing equipment, because I mentioned climbing equipment earlier. So we want to make sure children have safe and appropriate material to climb on, especially your boys, because they are more physically impulsive, all right? So climbing on equipment It's going to help the children learn to cooperate with others when involved in dramatic play, physical dramatic play. All right, and that's what we're doing when we're climbing, when we're playing on playground equipment. It's physical dramatic play, which is important. All right, that self-confidence as they develop new skills. All right, that self-confidence, and any of y'all that work in a 2-year-old classroom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When that toddler makes it to the top of the table and they're standing right in the middle of that table, they are so proud of themselves. All right, yes, I did it. I am king of the world. I'm on top of the table. And you can see that self-confidence and that behavior right there. But that's what's happening. Physical strength, coordination, and balance. Once again, that's coming up. To use their imagination. And actually, climbing equipment is fantastic for problem solving, And any of y'all that have ever been to a rock climbing wall, you understand this as an adult, that, you go to a rock climbing wall, there's a lot of problem solving that's going on here. Where am I going to move my hand? Where am I going to move my foot? Which one am I going to move first? What's going to get me to the top of that wall? So, I never will forget the very first time I went to a rock climbing, place that I did not anticipate how much problem solving was going to be involved in that activity. It was really, really cool. I love it. Good stuff. All right, one of my all-time favorite learning centers, and probably one of the most important learning centers in your classroom, the home center. All right, when children play in the home center, they are learning to be flexible with their thinking, to express themselves in sentences. Have y'all ever noticed, and this is where, again, I want y'all to go back and observe and assess, all right, and really reflect on this. Have y'all noticed how children, when they're playing in the home center, their language, there's a lot of articulation in their language. They think about what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. Because they're typically pretending to be someone else, all right? They're typically pretending to be mom, dad, or teacher. Those are the three people that they like to pretend to be. They're very articulate with their speech, all right? That's really cool. That's good, all right? We want to encourage that right there. It's their opportunity to try on different adult roles. And like I said, they pretend to be mom, dad, or teacher typically. How many of y'all have ever watched a child pretend to be you? All right. I love this right here. And, the kid is like, they're being teacher, right? And how many of y'all sit back and you're like, I don't sound like that. I don't say those things like that. Well, I think it's a great opportunity for reflection because the kids normally get it pretty right. All right. It's so funny when I hear teachers come to me and they're like, that child was pretending to be me today in the home center. And I'm like, well, how did that go for you? It's funny. To problem solve, there's a lot of problem solving happening in the home center, but it's different problem solving than what we've talked about previously. In the home center, it's social problem solving. All right. It's social problem solving through negotiation with friends. Now, we've talked a lot about children expressing themselves. We've talked a lot about, learning the factors that cause children to act out, and being able to put your finger on that. This is where the home center is so incredibly important because children will typically act out domestic scenes. So things that are going on in their life, all right, at home, they act it out in the home center, especially when they're pretending to be that adult role model. So you can learn so much about what's going on in their world, through this type of play right there. To start to sort and to organize. I can't remember what webinar I did just recently, but we talked about, in order to get children to clean up, you have to teach them, you have to show them, you have to practice the difference between play and cleanup. All right, so this, this is playing, this is cleaning up. All right, do y'all see the difference? So this is play, this is cleaning up. So we got to teach them the difference between the two. Sometimes y'all get very, very frustrated when the kids won't clean up, well, do they understand the difference between play and clean up? That's step one, all right? So with your home center, this is a great opportunity for you to start practicing sorting and organizing and cleaning up and those important life skills that come from sorting and organizing things. Making decisions, all right? You'll see children make decisions, the power of choice, all right, whenever they're in that home center. To improvise, all right, to use things in a symbolic way to represent something else, all right? This is all abstract thinking, all right? And we want to encourage more abstract thinking. Children are typically very concrete thinkers, all right? It's either black or white. When we talked about peekaboo earlier, and I told you how important peekaboo was in infant classrooms, you're either here or you're not, all right? And you're either in existence or you're gone from existence. So it's very concrete thinking. This is an opportunity to create abstract thinking, which is what we want to do for them. To carry out new ideas with the cooperation of others, to exercise their imagination and creativity. This is all good stuff. All right. Puppets. Where are the puppets? All right. How many of you have puppets in your classroom? I want to see. Give me a thumbs up or a heart, if you have puppets in your classroom. We just had a situation in my organization where a very, very long-term friend of mine, someone I've known for over 20 years, just recently sold her program, and she had 2 storage buildings full of equipment and supplies, and she asked us if we wanted them. So I went over and packed up these storage buildings and took it back and sorted it out and sent it all to our programs. But I found this giant tub full of puppets, and they were making fun of me because I was the most excited, happy person in the world, and I'm like, look at all of these puppets. It was so cool, but they're great. Puppets, when they're playing with puppets, they're learning to express their idea with words. Once again, very similar to the home center, there's a lot of articulation, all right? The other thing is different tones of voices, tone of voices that you hear whenever they're playing with puppets. They'll do a really high-pitched, hello, I'm Mr. Puppet, a real high-pitched voice, or the boys are usually really low-pitched, but that's good. We want to encourage that, all right? Julie's talking about using puppets for reading. Yeah, that's great. Puppets allow you to take on the role of someone else. And sometimes when the world isn't going our way, we just need to be somebody else for a little bit. All right? Even as adults, sometimes we just need to be somebody else for a moment. Get out of our skin and be someone else for just a moment. And puppets allow you to do that. All right? It's actually very healthy for you. To communicate with voice tones as well as words. So that's where I was talking about, the high pitch and the low voice, and to use their imagination. All right. Puppets are a great way to use your imagination. Playing with sand. All right. Again, the good old-fashioned sandboxes. So if you have a sandbox on your playground, this is a great opportunity for learning. If you don't have a sandbox, then we're going to use your sensory tables. If you don't have a sensory table, then once again, just a dish tub that you can pour some sand in, all right? And I prefer good old-fashioned, generic playground sand, all right? You can get it from Home Depot, from Lowe's, from Hobby Lobby. It is very inexpensive, very cheap. but just good old-fashioned generic playground sand. Now, they sell all of this fancy kinetic stuff, which is cool, but for the sake of learning, I like good old-fashioned sand. All right. Yes. Teresa's talking about, being somebody else helps you with empathy. Yes. Good comment, Teresa. And once again, empathy keeps you in your executive state. It's in the higher centers of the brain, and that's what we want. So good. So when we're playing in sand, we're learning to to exercise their imagination once again, the concept of size, shape, and volume, to distinguish the difference between empty and full. We've talked about that. How to use tools, all right? So you want to do a little shovel, a little rake, some of the other scientific items in there, using those tools right there to solve problems, all right? The concept of warm and cool, wet and damp, dry, heavy and light, all right? So, you have sand that looks and feels one way, but when you pour water in it and it gets wet, it gets colder, it's heavier, the texture is different. So these are all really good scientific learning opportunities. And once again, those of you in your toddler 2-year-old classroom, a great pre-potty training activity, because we're learning the difference between wet and dry, clean and dirty. All right. Play is actually, there's some really cool scientific research about this. Children prefer to play in sand with other children. It's a very social activity. Where earlier I talked about puzzles, children prefer to play with puzzles by themselves, all right? They prefer to play in sand with other children. So if you do have some kiddos that are struggling socially, sand play is really good to bring those kids together and create that cooperation and that social environment. Sand is also a great way to start to create systems for classifying, ordering, and arranging. All right, classifying, ordering, and arranging happens in the sandbox. To create their own patterns and symbols, once again, a reading and writing skill. Also brain development. To observe change, which is great for science. All right. Which leads us to our next learning center, which is again one of my favorites, but definitely one we need to work on because we're not seeing it enough these days, and that is the Science Center. I actually, just a couple of years ago, I did a poll where I asked early educators, why aren't we using the Science Center? All right, what is wrong with the Science Center and why aren't we using it the way we should? And, the number one response I got from folks is that they're scared of it. They don't have enough knowledge to appropriately use the Science Center the way it is intended to be used. So, definitely a great opportunity for some good professional development. I'm actually going to add that to my list of future webinars. That's a good idea right there. But how beneficial Science Center is in the classroom and how to appropriately use it based on the age group that you're working with. But science is great, once again, for new vocabulary, the concept of texture, color, weight, and size. But to group objects into categories, to observe the likeness and the differences of items. That's important right there, classification. But what I love about science that I really want to push with everyone is to appreciate nature. To appreciate nature and to develop a sense of wonder. Now, again, I'm going to take this back to the beginning of our workshop today. And when we talked about the decline of executive functions, all right, where we don't have that curiosity, we don't have that creativity, we're not creating our own play anymore, we're duplicating play, we're not creating play. Well, the more we can do to create a sense of wonder. All right, that sense of wonder is going to enhance curiosity. All right, it's going to encourage children to get out there and create their own play. All right, good stuff. Play-Doh, good old-fashioned Play-Doh or clay. There's some great things going on here. To see the shape against the background of the table, which once again is a reading skill. The concept of shapes and relative sizes. So with Play-Doh, you have a great opportunity to talk about what is a big ball of Play-Doh versus a small little piece of Play-Doh. We're going to get the rolling pin out and roll it out. And so we got length. We're going to talk about the length of the Play-Doh. And then we can chop it and have a shorter length, all right? The height, if you want to smush it all together and build it up, then we can talk about low and high. So great concepts of shapes that you can learn with the Play-Doh. The negative space, so when you do roll it out with the rolling pin, and then you get the cookie cutter, and you do the cookie cutter in the Play-Doh, and then you pull it out, that's creating negative space, which is reading skills right there. Play-Doh is a great way to express feelings, all right? You know, the world is not always going to go our way. We're going to get triggered. We need to practice active calming techniques. We need to practice being able to name our feelings. I'm sure that some of you have seen my feeling buddies that are back here. I've got feeling buddies for all of our feelings that we use in the classroom. But Play-Doh is a great way to, express your feelings by squeezing and by pounding, all right, that Play-Doh. So just like the climbing equipment, just like the art material where we're going to give it an appropriate time to make a mess, an appropriate time to climb, here is an appropriate time for you to squeeze and pound. All right, and the Play-Doh is that appropriate time, rather than squeezing and pounding our friends, all right, or our classmates. We're going to squeeze and pound the Play-Doh, so give them the appropriate time to do these activities, all right. Imagination and creativity, and the thing I love about Play-Doh is that we are learning that the amount of substance remains the same even when the shape changes. So no matter what shape you make with that Play-Doh or clay, the amount of the substance is the same. So that's pretty cool right there. All right. Riding toys. So when you're out on the playground and you're playing with those riding toys, so infant toddlers, we're required to have the riding toys so they've got that sense of motion, balance, and coordination. Those are important skills right there. And even for your older children, safe riding toys. They're going to be learning strength, balance, and coordination of their large muscles. So we've talked a lot today about small muscle development, but here's an opportunity for more large muscle development, just like climbing is a large muscle activity right there. To use their energy in a constructive way, all right? That physical impulse that especially your boys have, that they've got to get that physical impulse out. Once again, an appropriate way for them to use that energy that they've got bottled up inside of them. So once again, give them the appropriate opportunity to do that. Again, we got some new physical activity requirements coming out here in the state of Texas on, making sure children get both small and large muscle physical activity. Your riding toys are going to be great at meeting this expectation, but get that energy out. The concept of speed, direction, and location, all right? This again, those of you that are working with children with signs and symptoms pointing to a special need, being able to help them practice, direction and location is really important for these kiddos, all right? Direction and location. This goes back to predictability. Once again, goes back to predictability. To use their imagination as they pretend to be different characters and to make different noises. So you want to encourage your children to be very animated when they're on those riding toys right there. Negotiation and taking turns. You don't have a tricycle for every child, I'm assuming. You probably have 2 or 3 tricycles on your playground. So negotiating and taking turns, that again is all coming from the higher centers of the brain. You wanted to look at that. To solve problems, all right? And last but not least, the self-confidence as they master new skills. Have y'all noticed that the self-confidence continues to come up anytime there's small or large muscle development involved? Think about that, all right? So, again, the physical activity is a great way to build that self-confidence. Some children you're going to have to encourage more than others, all right? When you're looking at books and listening to stories, so I know we had a comment earlier about reading, so this is great for you right here, but books and listening to stories, this has been a big topic of conversation this week, hasn't it? Reading books, certain books. That learning to read is enjoyable and relevant to my world, so it's a great way to encourage children right there. That letters on a page represent words. It's talk written down. That those little black squiggly lines on that page actually represent something. So that's pretty cool. The meaning of more and more words. So we're building that vocabulary. We're building that vocabulary to express their own thoughts, their feelings, and their ideas better. So we're enhancing their ability to express themselves. We've talked about that a lot leading up to this point. To exercise their own imagination, we need that for self-regulation. To interpret pictures that represent new ideas. So again, when we talk about inner speech, children only have images. They don't have that voice inside of their head. So when we can associate pictures with words, pictures with language, it's going to help with that inner speech and the development of inner speech. Inner speech is necessary for reading and math, all right? Especially reading, all right? There you go. To actively listen to the spoken word, all right? To get them engaged in storytelling, to make up their own stories, I love doing a circle time and stopping halfway through the book. And then instead of finishing the story the way it's written, let the children finish the story. All right, we read half of the book. We're going to close it up now. Now, what do you think happens next? Or what would you like to happen next? And let the kids finish the story. They're fantastic at it. I love doing that right there. To handle books with care. I love this. And I always have a book first aid kit in the classroom that, your book first aid kit, just kind of like a tackle box that you can get from Walmart or whatnot, that has some cardboard and some paper and some packing tape and some glue sticks. And if a child does rip a book or damage a book, then they have to go get the book first aid kit, and you and that child will repair the book using the book first aid kit. That's a good activity. Don't make it too fun. Because if you make it too fun, then they're going to destroy your books on purpose just so they can repair them. So we got to do this in a constructive way. All right. The value of a well-done illustration, to recognize certain words when you see them in print. We talked about standardized testing earlier and some of the research that is coming out about standardized testing. With a lot of kids, what we're starting to learn is they're really not reading, they're memorizing. All right? And there's a difference between reading a word and memorizing a word. And that's kind of what we've done over the last 20 years is that because our focus has changed, that we've taught more memorizing of words than reading of words. So we've got to get back to the reading part of it right there. All right, to use more complex language and speech, and to follow a plot. All right. Here's, again, one of my favorite parts of the day, the favorite parts of the classroom, circle time. So let's talk about what children learn when they are in circle time. There is a worksheet question about this. So what are the benefits of circle time? To listen to sit still and to understand the spoken language. That's an important part right there. Oh, goodness. Hang on just one second, everybody. I'm having a technical... It's saying my battery's about to die, and I'm like, I'm plugged in? No. Hang on just a second. All right, hopefully that fixed it. We're almost done, so we'll make it. All right. To add value to your ideas and discussion, I love a very interactive circle time. The more we can engage the children, the more we can get their ideas, the better. To wait, to be patient when we're taking turns talking and sharing our ideas. Again, the new vocabulary that's coming out of the topics of discussion. To remember different words, different songs, to remember different people's names, all right? There you go. To cooperate and to be considerate of others. So a lot of empathy skills that you're hearing here from Circle Time. There you go. To help plan what you're going to do in the classroom. So you're creating ownership in the classroom with Circle Time. And I love doing this, especially with school-age children, all right? Instead of the teacher making the lesson plan, let the children be part of that planning, all right? And you can do this in Circle Time, or in school-age programs, we usually call it group time or something like that, a team time or whatever. But, that planning is going to give ownership. You're going to get more engagement whenever you've got ownership. All right, so lots of good social skills that are happening in Circle Time. Sorting activities. We're going to notice details like likenesses and differences of objects. We're going to form categories with sorting activities. We're going to talk about the concept of color, size, and shape. And, the numerical concept of more and less, all right, with sorting. Logical reasoning is happening with sorting activities. So lots of good stuff right there. Singing songs. We talked about dancing earlier, so now we're going to talk about singing songs. We're learning about the principles of music and rhythm. We're learning vocabulary, whenever we're singing. So many new songs that we learn, or new vocabulary that we're learning whenever we're singing. Memory skills, all right? Memory skills and sequencing. It's amazing how we can remember the words of a song, but we can't remember our home address, or our phone number nowadays. You have to look at your own phone to get your phone number. But I can remember the words to that new song that just came out on the radio. To be conscious of others. Auditory discrimination, all right, which is recognizing the differences in sound. That one is huge, all right, the auditory discrimination. The various concepts that are focused on in songs. Awareness and identification of culture, all right, and cultural heritage. So bring in some of that cultural music into your classroom. We want to do that through singing, all right? So that's a lot of good stuff out there as well. All right, I want to just very quickly kind of go through the different age groups and everything that we just talked about, all of the different types of play that we have in the classroom. In your infant room, to support infants in play, all right, we want to have a lot of really colorful objects. And when you're playing with an infant, you want those objects to be 10 to 12 inches from the baby's head. Because I want y'all to remember, when you're playing with infants, their vision is not fully developed. So they can only focus on something that is 10 to 12 inches from their head. And then the older they get, you can start moving it outward. So, we talked about the blocks. We talked about peekaboo, puppets, art, all of these different things that are age appropriate for your infants. 10 to 12 inches from their eyeballs, their head. Hold a toy or a rattle in each hand and shake them one at a time. So you're going to place, you're going to place the objects in the little baby's hands and you're going to help them hold it. And then we're going to shake with our left, shake with our right, shake with our left. This is creating the midline, and it's creating the awareness of different planes of the body. That's important for them. Offer baby 2 toys to hold, and then decide which one they prefer. So if you put these 2 toys and pretend like these are different, okay? Well, here, I'll do this. I've got this toy in this hand and this toy in this hand, and kind of help the baby hold it. Put it down in front of them to see which one they reach for. All right, that's an important skill right there. Introduce stimulation slowly in the infant room. So lots of music, lots of poetry. I love poetry in an infant room where the teacher is actually reciting poetry to the children. Y'all, this is so cool. All right. Excuse me, sorry. To show children how things work. So you're constantly describing how things work in an infant room right there. Interactive games like peekaboo we talked about, singing and dancing together. So I may hold the little baby, but I'm singing and dancing. Yes. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate the bless you. I promise it's not COVID. I got my vaccine. I actually got my vaccine yesterday, so I guess it hasn't kicked in yet, right? But yes. Playing ball together, and sometimes for a mobile infant, once they're starting to move around, putting that ball in front of them 10 to 12 inches in front of the baby and then rolling it forward so that they will go after it. It's kind of like fetch with a dog, but you're doing that with the baby too. So great ways to support those infants with play. Mobile infants have duplicates of the favorite toy because remember, they don't know cooperation and sharing yet. All right, they don't know cooperation and sharing, so we're going to have duplicates of the same toy. Reading books to children, the infants. We should be reading every single day to our infants right there. Once again, singing and dancing. Let children see how things work. You're going to describe, I'm turning on the water so that the water will come out and we can wash our hands. That's describing how things work, all right? When we combine things, we'll talk about that. But for your infants, as much repetition as possible. As much repetition as possible. That's critical for those infants right there. Toddler teachers, how you're going to support children in play. Follow the children's lead. All right, toddlers are creating independence. They're starting to realize that they're an independent person, that they have value, that they have thinking, that they have choices. So we want to support that pro-choice environment. So follow their lead. Let them create play. And just like we've talked about a lot in this workshop, we want children to create their own version of play. All right, that is so important when it comes to self-regulation. That's why we follow the toddler's lead, but we got to keep them safe at the same time. Marching bands with drums and instrument, and let them be the band leader, and you're going to follow along the classroom with them. This is also giving that pride and accomplishment. Encourage pretend play with your toddlers. But again, toddler teachers, you get to plant the seed where we're going to create our own play and not reproduce something we've seen in the media. All right. Create quiet opportunities for play. So play is not always loud and chaotic. Play can be quiet as well. Musical games, instruments, those are great. And when you see a child playing by themselves, invite another child to come play with them. So we've got a great opportunity for pro-social development right here with the toddlers while they're playing. Preschoolers and pre-K kids, at this age, children need ample, uninterrupted choice time throughout the day to develop their memory, their attention, and their self-regulation skills. So we want ample, uninterrupted choice time for these kiddos. Also, because the brain connections are hardwired through repetition, Extend and uninterrupted play gives children the chance to make cognitive connections repeatedly. All right, so it's those connections that are being formed in the brain. So, and it's hardwired through repetition. It's exercise for the brain. That's what repetition is. All right. While children are at play, pre-K and preschool teachers, you're going to observe and scaffold their learning by stepping in intentionally when appropriate, model curiosity, and engage children to ask them questions, to ask them about their environment, to ask them about what they're playing, and this is going to help them learn. All right, so fantastic. All right, we are doing great. We are right on time. So again, those of you that have never done a Saturday webinar with me on Facebook Live, I usually try to have about 2 hours worth of material, and then that way it gives you an hour to complete your online worksheet. So that's what is about to happen right here. All right, so that was a lot of really cool information. I had so much fun sharing the power of play with all of you. I hope that you at least wrote something down. If you wrote one thing down that was beneficial to you or something that you learned today, then today was a success. All right, that's all it takes is one new wrinkle in the brain for this webinar to be successful. All right. Again, here in just a little bit, I'm going to post a link on Facebook for you to complete your online worksheet. I will also post it in this chat stream for you to make it easier. There's going to be 2 different links. One of them will say online worksheet paying with a credit card. So if you're going to be paying your fee with a credit card, you will click on that link. There will also be a link that says online worksheet paying with an online account number. So if your school has set up an online account with me and you have been given a 5-digit account number by your director, then you will click on online worksheet paying with an account number. All right. So make sure you follow those instructions. Everything else is super easy from that point on. All right. So here's kind of how I like to describe it. If you don't intend on giving me a credit card number, don't click on online online worksheet paying with a credit card. If you're not going to give me a credit card number, don't click on that link. You're going to do the one for an online account. All right. If you don't have a 5-digit account number, if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, you're going to click on online worksheet paying with a credit card. So there you go. Hey, I got a couple of things coming up I wanted to share with you guys, you ladies and gentlemen. My next weekend mini conference, virtual weekend mini conference, is going to be April 9th and 10th. Now, I did have to change those dates. I backed them up a week. So those of you that might have received my postcard or received an email from me, I did have a conflict and I had to change the dates of my next workshop. So April 9th is going to be director workshop. We're going to talk about building your team. It's going to be team building. And then April 10th is going to be our teacher workshop, and that's going to be on diversity in the classroom. So that's going to be a really important one right there. I also have several 10 at 10s coming up. And those are my Facebook Live that I'm doing at 10 o'clock a couple of days a week. I know that some of you may be in the classroom. You're not able to attend 10 at 10. That's okay because they are recorded and you can find them on Facebook or you can find them on my website. But I've got illness exclusion policies coming up on March 9th. I have a minimum standards training coming up on March 23rd. Administering medication, we're going to be doing that one on March 25th. Handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste, we'll be doing that workshop, and then understanding insurance options. And all of this can be found on my website, timthetrainer.com. Just click on Tim at 10. Those are all really short 1-hour workshops, and so they're only $5 if you need a certificate of completion. And I will have a couple of special guests that will be joining me for a couple of those 10 at 10s coming up in the near future. So take a look at that. All right. So that's what we have coming up over the month of March. All right. I know that several of you have spring break coming up either next week or the week following. So have a wonderful, safe, and healthy spring break. I wanted to close out today's workshop just reminding everybody once again that even though we have some exciting announcements that were made this past week about mask mandates, we have child care workers and teachers that have been moved to the top of the list for vaccines, which is very, very exciting. That's why I got mine yesterday. Pretty cool stuff. But COVID is still out there. All right, we are still in this pandemic. It did not magically go away. We are still under emergency orders from the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. As of today, March 6, 2021, we are still under emergency orders. So y'all should still be following enhanced health practices, the CDC guidelines. All of that stuff has not gone away. We are expecting some guidance from Health and Human Services any day now. I suspect we will receive some guidance before Wednesday of next week. And we did get an email on Thursday that they were working on guidance for us. All right. I don't know what that's going to be just yet, but stay tuned. As soon as we get it, I will put together a webinar and we will do some education over what the next step is. But I just wanted to stress to y'all that don't let your guard down. All right, we are still in this pandemic. All right, so there you go. Yes, and I see a lot of you commenting that you're getting appointments, you're getting vaccine appointments for your staff. Fantastic, that's great. I have found CVS.com, the drugstore, pharmacy, CVS. Go to their website, but go early in the morning, like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Jump on CVS's website and you can grab an appointment, all right? By 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, they're all done. They're booked, all right? So you got to jump on super early is what I have found. My shirt, someone was asking about my shirt. I also have the sign in the background, proud early educator, and at the bottom of it, it's hashtag proud early educator. So I encourage all of you that, when you have something amazing going on in the classroom, take a picture of it. If you go to social media and post it, hashtag proud early educator. We're trying to get awareness of the incredible job that we do and the difference that we're making in these kids' lives. We're not glorified babysitters. We are educators. We are proud early educators, and that's what this is all about right here. You can order these shirts off of my website, timthetrainer.com. And I've got them in long sleeve and short sleeve, and then we also have some masks with the Proud Early Educator as well. And I know we were just talking about pandemic and COVID. I know that here in Texas, our mask mandate is ending on Wednesday. Don't go burning these, all right? They're not going away anytime soon, all right? The mandate to wear them may be ending, but you're still going to be wearing these masks, I guarantee it, all right? So don't go burning your mask just yet, all right? We will, at some point, have a big mask burning party. It's not anytime soon, all right? But I can't wait for that. All right, so here in just about 1 minute, the link for you to complete your online worksheet will be posted on Facebook. And then, like I said, I will post it in this chat screen. Thank you all so much for joining me this Saturday morning. Have a wonderful, safe, and healthy remainder of your weekend. I appreciate every single one of you for the job that you do. Keep your head up, keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing all of you in person very, very soon, all right? And again, if you jumped onto this webinar late, make sure that you go back and watch the beginning of it. That's very important so that you can see the entire thing. All right, bye everybody. Be good, make safe choices.